Hi, this is Bonnie. I'm here with Tennessee Craft this morning with Bret Wilson. Good morning, Bret.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Bret is the puppet truck supervisor with Wishing Chair Productions, which is based out of the Nashville Public Library. Wishing Chair Productions has been a great partner of Tennessee Craft over the years with the Tennessee Craft Fair, and this year we're so pleased to present the Ellingtown Puppet Show from the puppet truck. So Bret, tell us a little bit about Ellingtown.
Well, where to start? Well, Ellingtown, I would probably say some of our shows since the Nashville Public Library has had a long tradition of puppetry going all the way back to 1938 with the start of our founder, Mr. Tom Titchener. Some of our productions, they utilize some of Mr. Titchener's puppets. Some of them are based on his original stories. This show, Ellingtown, is relatively young. I would probably say it's about 10, 11 years old. And this particular show was the brainchild of Mr. Brian Hull, the artistic director here at Wishing Chair Productions, and a very, very special collaboration took part with the Nashville Jazz Workshop under the direction of Miss Lori Meacham. So those two minds came together to create this fantastic introduction to jazz for the citizens of Nashville, and I guess virtually for the entire world. So this has been a really fantastic presentation to be able to share, because it utilizes so many different forms of puppetry and introduces people of all ages to Duke Ellington's music if they've never experienced it before. So it's one of my top favorites. You, as a puppeteer, you just never get tired of playing with these characters and listening to music at the same time. So it's top shelf for me.
So I've seen Ellingtown before in a school maybe, and I've seen it at the Vanderbilt Children's Hospital, Monroe Carroll Children's Hospital. And you have brought many of your shows to the Tennessee Craft Fair, but never Ellingtown. Can you tell us why?
Absolutely, absolutely. So a lot of our performances, they receive certain ratings. Our utmost importance is the care, the preservation of the puppets, the scenery pieces, the props that we use. So the ratings pretty much determine whether a show can be performed indoor or outdoors. And most of the shows that we've presented for Tennessee Craft, of course, they've been on our wonderful Publix Kids tent. And Ellingtown, unfortunately, does not have an outdoor rating. The entire structure that you see behind me and you'll see in the video is 97, 98% all wood. And for Tennessee Craft, we usually perform for Friday, Saturday, and even Sunday, leaving our sets there overnight. So this particular show would experience moisture, or the wood would experience certain adjustments due to moisture temperature changes. So we want to avoid that, especially for this show, because it is one of a kind. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the buildings on the back, in a way, can act like a sail. And any gust of wind could potentially move the entire structure in any direction. And we don't want to have anything fall on our audience members. We love our audience. We love the citizens of Nashville. So we don't want to put them in any danger. But the third is that there's certain elements in the particular show that requires certain environments. One specifically is the shadow section. In order to create shadow puppets, you have to have a dark environment in order to see the characters that are being created. And you really lose that effect when you're outdoors. And that part of the show is a really fun part that really speaks to a lot of kids, a lot of adults, and an easy form that they can try. So we try to preserve every element of the story. And if we were to lose one, it would change the story. So that's one of the reasons why this show stays for indoor audiences only, to preserve the set, the story, and it's stuck around with us so far. We've never experienced any malfunctions of any kind up to this point.
So Bret, we always love our participants at the craft fair to be able to try something at home. Do you think that you could give us a demonstration of how we could try out the shadow puppets that are something that's kind of like what we see in Ellingtown?
Absolutely. So for Ellingtown, shadow puppetry, it's a really easy form. You don't need paper. You don't need, oh, you could make shadow puppets out of paper, cardboard, but the shadow puppets that you're going to see in the show, they're done with the hands. So you can do this at home. All you need, of course, is either like a flashlight, or if you have a lamp, you can use that as a light source. And it also needs like a blank wall. You can use the floor, you can use the ceiling, but you also have to use your imagination. There are also some really great books at the library that will teach you how to form different shadow creatures. Before we do anything, of course, for shadow puppetry or performance, it's always important that you always stretch your fingers. You always want to warm up when you do any type of physical activity. So there are a lot of warm up exercises. You wiggle your fingers, you shake your hands, you loosen up the wrist because you're going to be moving them in different directions. So there are about 4 or 5 different shadow puppets that I want to show you. The first, of course, is a classic, one of my favorites, the bird. Now, if you will, you're going to place your hands, fingers spread all apart, and what you're going to do is you're going to rotate your hand so that the thumb on your right hand is facing the right, and the thumb on the left hand is facing the left. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cross those until your thumbs meet. And it depends on the person. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the thumb on my right hand and I'm going to wrap it around the base of the thumb on my left hand. Now, I've got that locked in place, and the thumb that's on my left hand right there, I'm going to just bring that down just a little bit. Now, the last part is my fingers, I'm going to bring them together, and just by moving my fingers with a light, you would then have a bird in flight. It's a really fun and easy one. I suggest you try it out. Now, here's another one that I really, really like. This is the dog. Now, whether you want a large dog or a small dog, the dog is by far one of my favorites. And let me also mention that if you have puppets like the bird, you can make sounds if you want to. Now, that was for the bird. Let's talk about the dog. If you take your hand, and if you bring your hand, and you can use your left or your right, depending on what works for you. You bring your hand sideways. What you're going to do is you're going to bring all of your fingers together and keep your thumb facing the ceiling, okay? Now, the finger that's on the top, that's your pointing finger. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bring that one back and hold it right there. Very good. Now, the finger that's on the bottom, that's your pinky. What if you, and this might take some practice, but what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to separate that from your ring finger and then your middle finger, your pointing finger, and your thumb, so that you have a gap between your pinky and that ring finger. Now, with practice, if you can move that pinky finger, and it just requires developing those muscles right there in the hand and the wrist, but with practice, if you had a light, you could, of course, create the dog. Now, if you want to go a step further, you could move your thumb while the dog was barking, and then, of course, you could create the ears wagging or moving around while the dog was barking. But that right there is the dog. Now, one of my favorites. Now, let's get to something a little bit bigger, okay? Now, after doing so many of these shows, I've heard audiences yell out, "Oh, that's a that," or "That's a that, it looks like that, it looks like that." Well, this one puppet here can look like a swan, I've heard a duck, or a dinosaur. I'm going to show you how you can switch back and forth. Now, this one's going to be a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to go very slowly. If you take your hand, okay, and these 3 fingers here, pinky, ring finger, and your middle finger, you're going to bring those together, and you're going to allow there to be a gap between the pointing finger and the thumb. If you can hold that position, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to rotate my hand into this formation right there. Now you can see the side of my hand. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create 3 levels. The pointing finger, I'm going to move that up. So now that's the top level. These 3 fingers here, that's the middle level. And my thumb is now the lower level. So I have an upper, a middle, and then a lower level. Now, starting from the top, I'm going to bend my top finger so that it comes down. There you go. And if you look at it closely, with my wrist and my arm, you've got, some people would say that this was maybe a duck, or maybe some people would say that this looks like a dinosaur. And what you could do, because this is the wrist, you can move your thumb. You can do a lot of just fun things, fun voices. You can have the duck drink water. You can have the dinosaur. If you wanted, you could have grass. And then you could have, and then so on and so on and so on. Now, let me take this just a little further. If I turn to the side with the light on my arm, if I wanted to really create the duck, I would incorporate my fingers right where my arm bends at the elbow. And then what would happen is I can turn my wrist around and have the duck clean the feathers. Because ducks, they like to groom themselves, and that's perfectly fine. But then you can also have the duck on the water, going from one side to the other. You might see that one in Ellingtown in just a moment. That's always a fun one, okay? Now, let's go to something just a little bit higher, a rhinoceros, okay? Now, rhinoceros, it sounds difficult, but it's really, really easy, I promise you. The only thing that you do is, and you're going to utilize both hands, you're going to cup your right hand almost as if you're holding on to a grapefruit or maybe even a bowling ball. You're just going to cup it like so that your fingers curve up with your thumb here. And with your left hand, you're going to place that on the inside so that now your thumbs are together and your pinky on your right hand, you're going to bring it towards your thumb. And if you can look at that, that almost looks like a rhinoceros, because the rhinoceros has 2 horns, one horn there and one horn there. And then they have the really, really cute ears. So what you have there is you have the head of the rhinoceros, and by bringing your arms together, you have the neck going down into the body. I like yours, body. That looks really, really good. That's amazing. Now, let's get to the last one. And this is a little easy. It requires one hand, and all you have to do is place your hand like this, side profile. You're going to utilize, or you're going to use your pointing finger the same way that you used it for the duck or for the dinosaur. And you're just going to bring it up, but you're going to keep your arm straight, and what you'll have is a crocodile or an alligator. But if you bring it even with the light, you can then have an alligator. And that allows you to do all types of things, have all types of fun with just a light and a wall. So those are 5 of my favorite shadow puppets. Some of them you will see in this recording. Some of you seen them recording. Some of them you can find in books. There's some really great books. Some of them you can even find online. They're wonderful performers that demonstrate different forms of shadow puppetry, but those are some of my favorites.
This has been so much fun, Bret. Thank you so much for sharing all of these shadow puppets with us and for bringing Ellingtown to life at home. I know that so many of us are going to try this at home. And so thank you.
You're welcome. And you know what? We use jazz music for our shadow puppets. If you have a favorite song, you can perform shadow puppets to your favorite music. You can create your own stories, your own segments. The possibilities are endless.
Thank you for the inspiration, Bret. And I hope that we can join you again for a puppet show soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look forward to it.